Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're well. You know, I'm often asked, why do you talk about politics all the time? And one of the reasons I give is that politics, and moreover the decisions of the politicians, influence just about everything in our everyday lives. So I find myself inexplicably going down that road more often than not. And I was reading the news this evening, and I found an article which really illustrates this point. Now, we've got this situation at the moment where they're fooling themselves, Starmer particularly, over increasing, the percentage of GDP to do with defence. You see figures of 3.5%, 5%, and all the rest of it. And ultimately, how's it going to be paid for? Well, you know what Labour are like with their taxes, and that's exactly what we're looking at. I saw a headline here, and I'll stick it on the screen. Britons face £30 billion tax raid from Rachel Reeves to pay for dramatic increase in NATO defence spending. So for this forever war, we've discussed this on the channel repeatedly, we're all going to get screwed over on this in our taxes, let alone everything else. And, have a listen to this. This is the kind of chancellor that we've got, the kind of government we've got. Britons are in line for a tax rate of up to 30 billion quid in the autumn budget to fund enhanced defence spending. Economists have warned advanced defence spending. I thought by aligning ourselves with the European Union on defence, we would have access to a multi-billion pound slush fund. Why are our taxes going up? Analysts suggest higher taxes appear unavoidable as Chancellor Rachel Reeves would otherwise find it difficult to fulfil commitments to boost defence expenditure whilst adhering to her self-imposed fiscal rules. In other words, we're in the shit. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has committed to raising UK defence spending to 3% of GDP by the next Parliament, but NATO is anticipating to require even greater commitments later this year. Why would NATO be anticipating greater commitments unless they know something we don't? And I love this. This is the normal line, isn't it? Keir Starmer's going to commit to do something by the next Parliament, which means if he's not there and it all goes wrong, he can blame the next guy. It's just an example of the pantomime, isn't it, really? Reeves may need to abandon manifesto pledges not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT as spending pressures mount. Well, you've abandoned your election pledges with regard to winter fuel allowance, the pensions, the farms and just about everything else you care to mention, so why stop there? NATO is expected to demand members increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP in the coming years. Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary-General, recently stated, "We know that 2% pledge agreed way back in 2014 just doesn't cut it anymore." Well, of course it wouldn't. It was 11 years ago. So in 2025, we're finalising a plan to dramatically increase defence spending across the alliance. I'm starting to question the validity of NATO, I know why it was originally created, North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. A clue's in the name, really, isn't it? But look at what's happened, particularly over the last 20 to 30 years. Don't believe what the news tells you or what they want you to believe in the news. You need to look further back into history to see where this had all started and the direction we're heading in. No wonder certain parties are getting rather pissed off. The additional defence spending requirements come as Reeves faces pressure following the recent reversal on winter fuel payments for pensioners and unfavourable movements in financial markets. Well, the winter fuel payments reversal, you're going to get shafted by the electorate, so that's why you've gone down that road. You're scared of losing your job. And now you've got to wonder how you're going to pay for it. Well, how did you pay for it in the first place? Oh, by the way, stick 100% tariffs on France until the boats stop. That'll bring a few quid in, won't it? Michael Saunders, a senior policy advisor at consultancy Oxford Economics, said The Prime Minister was likely to increase spending gradually over this Parliament to make the 3% target and above easier to achieve in the future. Saunders said to establish a more credible path to defence spending considerably north of 3% next decade, the government may decide in the autumn budget that it needs to add extra spending within the 5-year OBR forecast horizon. Extra spending. I wonder how much debt we're in by now. What do you reckon? It's not hard to see pressures for extra fiscal tightening of £15 billion to £30 billion. The need to raise revenues may require the government to revisit its manifesto commitments, which seem to rule out increases in most major taxes. Well, as I said previously, they've shafted us in just about every other way, so what difference does that make? You can't trust them at all. At all. The Chancellor has left herself a margin of £9.9 billion to meet her fiscal rules. It's a wafer-thin buffer that forced her to tear up spending plans in the spring to repair her budget. So at the end of the day, Rachel from Accounts strikes again. And now analysts note Reeves must also contend with mounting costs from the Labour government's pledge to restore winter fuel payments and review the two-child benefit cap. The problem with the two-child benefit cap, I don't agree with this thing of raising it, allowing payments to be made beyond 2 children, because at the end of the day, you're incentivising people to have kids and not work. What about a system of tax reliefs? The more kids you've got, the more relief from tax you get. You'll be encouraged to work then, and you put more money into the economy. All right, I get there's probably a lot of English families out there who have probably been shafted where they've ended up with 4, 5, 6 kids, and the system changes, but you can't change that. And I'm talking as a man who's got 2 kids. You have to manage. There are concerns that a downgrade to the UK's economic growth by the OBR and increased government borrowing costs from rising gilt yields would eliminate Reeves's limited fiscal headroom entirely. Earlier this week, the Chancellor repeatedly refused to rule out further tax rises. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to take any tax measures in the next 4 years, she told business leaders at the Confederation of British Industry annual dinner. Oh, that's all right, we believe you then. Not. At the end of the day, socialism doesn't work. Socialism is a path to something else. And we've seen in the past where Labour have been entrusted with the purse strings. Look what happened last time round, and we're heading in that direction again. And the thing is, they believe that they'll get themselves out of trouble by raising taxes and making people pay them. But I would argue that if people haven't got the money, they're not going to pay it. Therefore, you're not going to get out of any trouble. This is heading for the same disastrous territories we had last time. And before people jump out of the woodwork and say it, yes, I know, the Tories were at it as well. This just shows why the whole system is completely and utterly defunct, needs scrapping and starting again. You let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. There is quite a percentage of you that watch and haven't subscribed, so I'd appreciate it if you could have a look at that. Hit the like button, as that helps this video go around the airwaves. Have a look at this video here. This is another one of my Starmer videos. And as always, thanks for watching. I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.